He watched Rome burn, and while everyone else panicked, he stayed calm. Seneca, a man who had everything, lost everything, and somehow found peace in the middle of it all. Most people think staying calm is about ignoring problems or pretending everything's fine. But that's not what Seneca taught. What he discovered was something completely different. Something that could change how you handle every bad day, every crisis, every moment when life feels like it's falling apart. And the crazy part? He learned this lesson while living in one of the most unstable, dangerous times in history. So picture this. Ancient Rome, the most powerful empire on earth. But behind all that glory, it was a mess. Emperors were being murdered. Assassinations were common. One day you're powerful, the next day you're dead. Betrayal was everywhere. Trust was a joke. And right in the middle of all that chaos was Seneca. He was a philosopher, a writer, and an advisor to Emperor Nero. Yes, that Nero, the one who eventually went completely insane. Seneca spent years walking on a knife's edge. One wrong word and he'd be executed. One mistake and his entire family could be killed. The pressure was constant. The danger was real. And yet, he managed to stay calm through all of it. How? That's what most people get wrong about him. They think he was just naturally calm, that he was born with some special ability to handle stress. But that's not true. Seneca was anxious. He was stressed. He felt fear just like everyone else. The difference was that he learned something that most people never figure out. He learned that you can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you react to it. Sounds simple, right? But it's not. Because when something bad happens, your first instinct is to panic, to fight it, to wish it wasn't happening, to get angry at the situation or the people involved. And that's exactly what makes everything worse. Seneca saw this pattern everywhere. People suffering not because of what happened to them, but because of how they reacted to it. They'd lose money and spiral into depression. They'd face criticism and explode with rage. They'd experience one setback and convince themselves their entire life was ruined. He realized that most human suffering is self-inflicted. Not because we're weak, but because we don't know how to handle our own minds. So he started studying this. How do you stay calm when everything around you is falling apart? How do you keep your head clear when everyone else is losing theirs? And what he discovered changed everything. First, he learned that most of what we worry about never happens. Think about that for a second. How many times have you stressed about something that never actually became a problem? How many hours have you lost worrying about conversations that went fine, or situations that turned out okay, or disasters that never came? Seneca called this borrowed suffering. You're living through a painful event in your mind before it even happens. And most of the time, it doesn't happen at all. So you just tortured yourself for nothing. He said, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. That's the first key. Stop creating problems that don't exist yet. Stop playing out worst-case scenarios in your head over and over again. Because, while you're busy panicking about tomorrow, you're ruining today. But, here's the thing. Seneca wasn't saying ignore real problems. He wasn't telling people to just pretend everything's fine. That's fake positivity, and it doesn't work. What he was saying is this: when something bad actually happens, accept it. Don't fight reality. Don't waste energy wishing things were different. Because they're not different. They are what they are. And the faster you accept that, the faster you can actually do something about it. This is where most people get stuck. Something goes wrong, and they spend all their energy being angry that it went wrong. They complain, they blame, they spiral. And while they're doing all of that, the problem is still there. Unchanged. getting worse. Seneca said the wise person doesn't ask why this happened. They ask what they're going to do about it now. That's the shift. From victim to actor. From complaining to solving. From chaos to calm. But there's more to it. Because staying calm isn't just about accepting bad situations. It's about preparing for them before they happen. Seneca had this practice he did every single day. He called it negative visualization. Basically, he'd imagine losing everything: his wealth, his status, his freedom, his life. He'd sit with those thoughts, really feel them. And then he'd remind himself that none of those things defined him. Why would he do that? Because when you practice losing everything in your mind, nothing can surprise you. When you've already imagined the worst doesn't have power over you anymore. This isn't pessimism. It's preparation. It's training your mind to stay steady no matter what happens. And it worked. Because years later, when Nero turned on him, when Seneca lost his power and his wealth and was eventually forced to take his own life, he faced it with calm. Not because he wanted to die, but because he'd already accepted that death was coming someday. He'd made peace with it long before it arrived. That's the level of mental strength he built. Not by avoiding fear, but by facing it over and over again until it lost its grip on him. Now, let's bring this to your life. Because you're probably not advising insane emperors or living in ancient Rome, but you're dealing with your own version of chaos. Maybe it's work stress. Deadlines piling up. Bosses breathing down your neck. Co-workers creating drama. And you can feel yourself getting overwhelmed. Heart racing. Mind spinning. That feeling like everything's about to collapse. Or maybe it's personal. Relationships falling apart. Money problems. Health scares. Family issues. The kind of stuff that keeps you up at night and makes you feel like you're drowning. Seneca's advice to you is the same advice he gave to himself 2,000 years ago. Stop, breathe, and ask yourself one question. What part of this can I actually control? Because here's the truth. Most of what stresses you out is completely outside your control. You can't control what other people do. You can't control the economy. You can't control how things turn out. You can't control the past. But you can control your response, your attitude, your next move. And when you focus only on what you can control, everything gets simpler, clearer, calmer. Let's say someone at work criticizes you unfairly. Your first reaction might be anger, frustration, the urge to defend yourself or fire back. That's normal. But Seneca would tell you to pause. Ask yourself, is this person's opinion something I can control? No. Can I control how I respond? Yes. So instead of reacting emotionally, you respond calmly. You take what's useful from the criticism and ignore the rest. You don't let someone else's words control your emotional state. That's power. Real power. Not the power to control everything around you, but the power to control yourself. Or, let's say you lose your job. That's a real crisis. Bills to pay. Uncertainty about the future. Fear about what comes next. All of that is valid. But Seneca would ask you, can you control the fact that you lost the job? No, that already happened. Can you control what you do next? Absolutely. So, instead of spiraling into panic and self-pity, you take action. Update your resume. Reach out to contacts. Look for opportunities. You accept the situation and move forward. And here's what happens when you do that. The chaos doesn't disappear, but your relationship with it changes. You stop being a victim of circumstances and start being someone who handles them. That's what staying calm really means. It's not about feeling nothing. It's about feeling everything and choosing not to let it control you. Seneca lived this until his last breath. Even when Nero ordered him to die, even when soldiers came to his door, he stayed calm. He said goodbye to his friends, he made his peace, and he faced the end without falling apart. Not because he was fearless, but because he'd spent his whole life training for that exact moment. And the lesson he left behind is this: life is unpredictable. Chaos is guaranteed. Pain is unavoidable. But suffering, that's optional. Suffering happens when you fight reality, when you resist what's already true, when you let your mind spiral into worst-case scenarios that haven't happened yet. Calm happens when you accept what is, when you focus on what you can control, when you prepare your mind for anything. Seneca didn't have an easy life. He didn't avoid problems. He faced more danger and stress than most of us will ever experience. But he stayed calm through all of it. Not by running away, not by pretending, but by training his mind to see clearly, act wisely, and let go of what he couldn't change. That's the secret. And it's still here, still waiting for you to use it. Because the world is still chaotic. Life is still unpredictable. And you're still going to face moments that test you. But now, you know what Seneca knew. You know where real calm comes from. It doesn't come from controlling everything around you. It comes from controlling the one thing you actually can. Yourself. Watch the next one, it goes even deeper.